I absolutely love filling in for Mark. I absolutely love filling in for Mark on a Friday because you get to have the most fun. You have a Friday Fabulous Florida. You get to talk to Michael Schur. You also get to talk some entertainment, and I love talking entertainment with none other than Michael Snyder, who comes and goes on a rainbow. Is the rainbow here, Albert? Yes.
Hey, hi, Mo. Hey, you know what I like to say when you guest host?
What's
Les
that?
Thompson, Mo Kelly. Actually, I'm a little curious, man. When Mark takes time off, do you and Michael Schur draw straws to see who has to host in his absence? I imagine the guy with the short straw is stuck sitting in the captain's chair, but we're happy you're here.
I'm glad to be here, but that's actually up to Kim. That's above my pay grade. When they call, I just show up. I have no idea.
Well, you know, regardless of who's hosting and the fact that I'm here, it's May Day. And coincidentally, May Day is the universal call for help when confronted by catastrophe. And man, do we need some help now. I'm telling you. Oof. I've been listening to the show, and, if I was a religious man, I'd be praying for the soul of our country.
I am a religious person, and I do pray for the soul of our country, but I do know as a Christian and a student of the Bible, there's stories, and people know the story of Job. Just because you pray, it doesn't mean that the Lord won't put you through some things, take you through some things. And the country is going through some things right now. We will not be able to decide when we'll be on the other side. So we're going to be in this predicament for a while.
Well, I do believe in the existence of evil, and coincidentally enough, the first movie we're going to review this show is The Devil Wears Prada 2. It's a different, milder version of the devil than the one we know about from religious teachings. After 2 decades, someone in a studio boardroom said, yeah, let's finally do a sequel to the massively successful and well-regarded high-fashion satire, The Devil Wears Prada. And lo and behold, we have The Devil Wears Prada 2. And, the 4 main actors from the original are back. That would be Meryl Streep as imperious, offhandedly cruel runway magazine editor Miranda Priestley, Anne Hathaway as the relentlessly bubbly journalism student turned glorified office gopher Andy Sachs, Emily Blunt as Miranda's conniving assistant, Emily, and Stanley Tucci as Miranda's loyal, snarky second-in-command, Nigel. Not only that, The Devil Wears Prada director David Frankel and screenwriter Aline Brosh McKenna are on board again, and the result is fine, and it should be especially fun for fans of the first Devil Wears Prada from 20 years ago. But some stretches of what I guess I could call tough to believability, the shoehorned presence of Blunt's rival character who had moved on to another gig in 20 years, but is brought in as a necessary foil for Hathaway's protagonist. And the predictable plot machinations and the callbacks make this less memorable than Devil #1. That said, the movie does acknowledge the rise of digital media, the death of paper media. I mean, we're talking about people that work at a magazine. The obscene do and buy anything they like tech billionaire class and their penchant for hostile corporate takeovers and consolidations. It also has a wealth of glamorous fashions and locations, and it throws in a pretty snazzy Lady Gaga number, with her being only one of a gaggle of celebrity cameos. It becomes kind of spot the famous fashionista after a while. And times have changed in other ways, such as human resources and cancel culture, compelling Miranda to be less of a monster to her staff. The dialogue is witty. The actors inhabit these familiar roles like the proverbial comfortable shoe, and of course that would be a designer shoe. And some of the additions to the cast, such as those playing new faces at Runway Magazine, are happily in tune with the whole shebang, although Kenneth Branagh, and there's a name. He's sort of wasted or underused as Miranda's classical musician husband. If The Devil Wears Prada 2 is and pardon the fashion reference, knockoff of The Devil Wears Prada, at least it feels more stylish than off the rack. On the other hand, this fluff also felt like it would be as enduring as last year's Haute Couture, wear it once, then toss it in the back of the closet. Yeah, I enjoyed it. The Devil Wears Prada 2 is in theaters. Did you see the first, Mo?
I did, and I'm going to rewatch the first so I can have all the characters fresh in my mind prior to seeing 2. Now, this is one question I do want to ask you. Do you think that there's a Devil Wears Prada 2, these legacy sequels with some 20 years in between, if there weren't movies like Top Gun Maverick, where you have this long gap and you bring back some of the main characters and update the story? In other words, do you have Devil Wears Prada 2 without the success of Top Gun Maverick or some other movie like it?
Yeah, I think you're probably onto something. I've said this over and over again. Hollywood wants to put out and invest in things that are familiar and tested. That whole idea of proof of concept is kind of embedded in getting these sequels up and running, even after a long time. They just want a revenue stream, and there is the hint of cash cow about doing something like this, especially if you're bringing back all of these really popular actors who have gone on to bigger and better things. It's sort of a no-brainer, right?
It just seems like it'd be much more expensive to get an Emily Blunt now, or Meryl Streep now, as opposed to 20 years ago.
Well, the profit potential far outweighs the cost of bringing her back, I think, in something like this. Anyway, when I was a kid, my friends and I had a phrase we spouted anytime we encountered something that we thought of as crap or bogus or nonsense, and that phrase was bunkin' hokum. For the record, the word hokum specifically means nonsense, but hokum is also the title of an atmospheric haunted house movie that opens this weekend. Not so much nonsense, except in the perceptions of the viewer. Hokum leans into folk horror, befitting its rural Irish hotel setting, and it features a deliciously unlikable lead character, successful novelist Oom Bauman, played by Adam Scott of Severance. So this movie comes from Damien McCarthy, the Irish writer-director of 2024's uber cool and pretty unsettling ghost story Oddity. McCarthy seems to enjoy toying with lore and legends, and he has a number of disturbing characters wandering in and out of the inn where this is set as autumn winds gust through the trees that surround the place, and the desk clerk and other employees speak in hushed tones about witches and missing persons. And as it happens, talk about convenient, Ohm checks in on Halloween night, as Count Floyd would say, ooh, spooky. So Ohm is there to hole up and try to finish writing the final book in his best-selling adventure trilogy. But this also happens to be a hotel where his parents once stayed. And because of that, he plans to scatter their ashes in the area. I mean, I can't imagine anything going wrong with this plan.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say there are a lot of out-and-out scares here, and the story logic is tenuous, but Hokum does manage to generate enough dread and anxiety as we watch Ohm try to navigate this seemingly cursed locale and deal with the traumas of his past and, more current threats. And it works well because of that. And when a jump scare does happen, and a few do, they will rattle you. It's in theaters. It's called Hokum. I thought it was good of kind. Okay. Now let's move on to something a little more on the silly side, and that is Deep Water. This is a disaster movie from that notable haction director, a director who's kind of a hack, Rennie Harlin. And here he does an amalgam of Airport, Flight Plan, and the more recent Plane with Jaws, Harlan's own Deep Blue Sea, and The Meg. The situation is that a plane flight going from Los Angeles to Shanghai goes down in the middle of the Pacific, and sharks are awaiting their buffet in the water. I'll be damned if I didn't get a kick out of the sheer spectacle here. The big names here, by the way, are Aaron Eckhart and Ben Kingsley as the plane's pilots, with Kingsley scoring another brief screen time payday, although one that's more considerable than his, I don't know, 2-line role as an Arabian emperor in last week's mediocre Desert Warrior movie. Angus Sampson resonates as the worst passenger in the history of aviation. And little Molly Bell Wright, so good in last week's indie drama Omaha, which I will recommend again, is really good as a young passenger in peril. This was kind of enjoyable, fun,
Really?
escapism. It's crap, but it's the kind of crap that you get kind of caught up in. And Harlan, for all of his flaws, does know how to direct this kind of, lunacy. And, people commit to it. And for that reason and that reason alone, the cast's commitment, the technology involved in telling a story like this, and of course our tech has improved in leaps and bounds over the years. So yeah, man, it looks like a school of sharks is chomping on these people when they're floating in the water. I recommend it as a popcorn muncher. And I do want to warn people who have, easily upset constitutions that, yes, there are violent moments, and the shark attacks and the plane crash will not sit well with some people. But for what it is, and we don't see a lot of disaster movies these days, I think this was pretty good.
Look, I have my own Rennie Harlan story. When I worked at Warner Brothers Records, we did the soundtrack for Deep Blue Sea, and we went to the premiere, and Harlan was there, LL Cool J, David Morse. So in other words, I'm familiar with him and his work. And my question to you, was it at least as good as Deep Blue Sea? Because that movie, even though it was kind of hokey and campy at times, I still enjoyed it. And if you're saying that you enjoyed it, then I'm inclined to give it a chance.
But I think the hokey, campy aspects of Deep Blue Sea elevated a little bit for me, in terms of the entertainment quotient. This doesn't have that, but this is done in a workmanlike fashion, and it does what it sets out to do. It's tense. It's kind of a thriller. You're rooting for and against some people. I have to say, the Angus Sampson character, you want him to get eaten by sharks within seconds of them hitting the water. But I'm not going to say whether that does or doesn't happen. Ultimately, deep water is forgettable stuff. It's ephemeral. When you leave the theater, it'll leave too. But, if you're looking for something like this, you found it. Okay, let's get to something more thoughtful and actually, in some ways, not as successful at what it tries to do as Deep Water, believe it or not. Animal Farm is a new animated film based on George Orwell's allegorical novel, which was a look at how dictatorships can come about despite what appears to be noble intentions. Orwell's 1984, that novel, a prescient view of a future totalitarian society, is on a lot of minds these days as the U.S. descends into what smacks of blatant autocracy. Thus, I think it's kind of a good time to revisit Animal Farm. So this new animated modernization of Animal Farm is a hit-and-miss revision of this renowned satire about animals trying to build a communal, human-free social order at the farm where they live and work in the aftermath of the farmer's departure. Although the core concept of the new order is that all animals are created equal, it doesn't take very long for the pigs to embrace materialism and start to repress the other animals with a push from the greedy human head of a monolithic corporation that covets the farm for development. Yeah, it's a little different, I think, in some ways than the novel. So this is directed by Andy Serkis, the actor who played Gollum in the Lord of the Rings movies and Caesar in the, the revision of the Planet of the Apes series. And he directed Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Not a great movie, but the voice cast is top notch, including Serkis Glenn Close as the evil CEO, Gaten Matarazzo from Stranger Things as the naive pig Lucky, Seth Rogen as kind of pretty villainous, the devious dictatorial pig Napoleon, Woody Harrelson as a noble, hardworking horse, Steve Buscemi as a sniveling bank employee. You got Jim Parsons, Laverne Cox, Kieran Culkin, Kathleen Turner, and Iman Vellani. So star-powered, am I right? Okay. Screenwriter Nicholas Stoller had some success writing and directing the gay rom-com Bros, the animated comedy Storks, and some other movies. This guy directed Forgetting Sarah Marshall and Neighbors, so he's skilled, but his script for Animal Farm falters. The visuals are pretty good, although the animals are more appealing than human characters, but the updates, the changes, and the moments of lowbrow slapstick humor don't enhance the source material or the message. They are unsubtle, to say the least. With the subtext that's too sophisticated for the kids and an execution that's too ham-handed for adults, this Animal Farm is just a little too ramshackle to deserve much of an endorsement. It is in theaters.
Disappointing.
Yeah, I was disappointed. I mean, obviously I was caught up in it, but yeah, I found it disappointing. Let's move on. Casa Grande is a decent family drama that felt like the feature film equivalent of one of those soapy cable channel Western shows that Taylor Sheridan does for Paramount Plus, like Yellowstone and its ilk. Okay, get this. There's a contemporary spin. Nefarious ICE agents try to drag an undocumented Mexican couple off the California ranch where they've worked for years. But Hassie, the daughter of ranch owner Sawyer Clarkman, a white family, intercedes and has to go on the lam with her partner, who happens to be the son of the couple. And eventually, meaning very early in the film, she returns to the ranch when she learns that her father, Sawyer, is dying, and she gets embroiled in Dad's rivalry with the corrupt neighboring rancher Roy Reyes, a Mexican cartel type who has designs on his neighbor's property. So everyone in the families of the two adversaries gets caught up in the increasingly treacherous conflict. Juan Pablo Arias Munoz directs a more than competent cast led by John Piper Ferguson and Lou Diamond Phillips as the rival ranchers, and Madison Lawler and as Hassie, and Lawrence Swickard, one of the movie's multiple screenwriters, is there as Roy's daughter, Rowan. It may not be an award winner, but Casa Grande is what I'd call a pulpy diversion that does what it sets out to do. You get caught up in the war between the two clans. This is generally not my cup of tea, but I thought for what this is, it worked, and it is in select theaters. I'm sure it's going to be streaming sooner or later. Let's just wrap things up. One more little nod at the movies, because it's a movie I really liked, and it's the sort of thing that I can recommend wholeheartedly. No Ordinary Heist was inspired by the actual 2004 bank robbery in Ireland, and a couple of bank employees who are very, very well played by the beloved British actor Eddie Marsan and a lesser-known actor named Deanna Hardwick. They get caught up in this thing, and they're sort of forced to help the criminals execute the heist, because the criminals kidnap the families of these guys, the bank manager and one of his flunkies, and threaten to kill them if these guys don't help the criminals execute the theft. And it's just very well directed, very well written, very well acted. There's a lot of tension. I love a heist movie, Mo. I really do. And I would suggest that No Ordinary Heist fits the bill. Director and co-screenwriter Colin McIver does a good job in keeping all the moving parts going. And I thought it was really damn good. It's in theaters, and guess what? It just started streaming, so you can get it video on demand. No Ordinary Heist. And that pretty much wraps up the movie reviews for today.
See, this is why I really like talking with you, Michael Snyder, because not only are you comprehensive in your reviews, you usually talk about movies that I would be interested in seeing. The Devil Wears Prada 2, you tell us about the four main characters. Actors are back, but there's some believability issues. It's less memorable than the first one and more predictable than the first one, but I get the sense it's at least worth your time. Is that fair?
Yeah, the one viewing, one, like I said, you wear it once and then put it back in the closet. Unlike the
Mhm.
other film, The Devil Wears Prada, the original one, which you could probably revisit and get, plenty of entertainment and pleasure out of it.
Hokum, it leans into folk horror. It stars Adam Scott, we know of Severance. Michael says it generates just enough dread and anxiety to suffice. Easy for me to say. And there are even a few jump scares. But you liked it, but you didn't love it.
Yeah, I preferred the director's previous movie, Oddity, but it's good for what it sets out to do. There are just, like I said, logic issues at some point. You have to, like I repeat on occasion, late comedian George Miller used to say, buy the premise and you buy the bit. There are certain kind of issues with backstory that end up being so vague that it kind of undercuts the power of the movie. But I thought it was well done. And if you're a horror fan, I think you're going to be entertained. Let's put it that way.
I've always been a fan of disaster movies. I've always been a fan of shark movies. Well, why not put them together? Deep Water is an amalgam of all the shark movies we know. We talked about Deep Blue Sea and Rennie Harlan. I happen to like Deep Blue Sea. If you look at the poster, it's very reminiscent of the original Jaws poster, and I know that had to have been intentional. You said it was enjoyable, Michael. There was a great degree of escapism. So that's enough for me to check out Deep Water.
Yeah, it's product. And honestly, I would say, if you have disposable income and you want to kill a couple hours, you could go to the theater. But this does seem like something that merits watching at home if you do like this kind of thing. And boy, oh boy, does it evoke the Jaws poster. With its own poster. And remember, this is the guy who did Deep Blue Sea. So Deep Water is him dipping his toe in the same wide ocean of movie making.
Pun intended, I'm sure. I remember when I was at Calimere Middle School in Torrance, it was maybe 6th or 7th grade. We read Animal Farm, George Orwell's novel, and I always wanted to see that brought to the big screen. There have been various attempts over the years, but this is a genuine attempt on the big screen level. It's animated. It's a stellar cast. But Michael, you tell us that this updated version doesn't enhance the source material. It's for a contemporary audience, and a lot of those updates just seemingly fell flat.
Yeah, it seemed gratuitous on some level. And, on the other hand, you got to admire the craftsmanship and the talent at play here. Contrary to what people believe, I don't really like dumping on films, and I won't do that here. There are things about it that I liked, but it does not really seem like it needed to be made.
Casa Grande felt like a soapy Western TV show a la Taylor Sheridan, with cartels, ICE agents, and undocumented individuals, ranchers. Oh my, but watchable, you said.
Watchable of kind, yeah. I think, let's put it this way. My sister is a devotee of the Taylor Sheridan movies. She would gobble this thing up with a spoon.
Oh, no, then say no more, because I'm a Taylor Sheridan fan. I love his TV shows, A Lioness, Landman, all of those. So if it's in that motif or style, then you got my attention. So I want to check it out.
Boy, don't come after me if you didn't like it. I'm telling you.
And Ordinary Heist. It's inspired by a 2004 real Ireland bank robbery. Well written, acted, and directed. I love a heist movie, so I'm in. Regardless of your review, I would have been in anyhow, because I'm always looking for another heist movie.
Well, this could, as a sleeper, might be the best film I saw that we reviewed today. It's interesting. They come out of left field sometimes. I would say that Omaha last week was truly the best film I covered. But, your mileage may vary, but there you have it.
Let me just say this before you go. We didn't have a chance to do TV, but I'm still loving Monarch: Legacy of Monsters. It's in season 2 on Apple TV. For me, it's a closest cinematic companion to a actual movie. The money that they're spending on this series, as far as CGI and production, is stellar. I love it. What say you, Michael?
I absolutely love it. Monarch Legacy of Monsters. The second season continues the story from the first. It's a part and parcel of all the movies done by Legendary in tandem with Toho, the Japanese studio that made and controls the Godzilla movies and all those other kaiju favorites, including Ghidorah and Rodan. And man, I love this show as well, and I think there was a very satisfying final episode with a bit of a cliffhanger that leads us to think that Series 3 should be greenlit, and kudos to the Russell family, specifically patriarch Kurt Russell and his son Wyatt, who play the same character only over many decades. The young version played by Wyatt and the elder played by Kurt, and the entire cast, including Anna Sawai, the Emmy winner from Shogun, they're all just great. And I'm totally invested in all the people here, and it could, along with Kong Skull Island, be the absolute best stuff to come out of Legendary's Monsterverse. So we're on the same page about that, Mo.
Agreed. They play it straight. They play it seriously, akin to the original Godzilla of this Legendary universe of 2014. I love it. Michael Snyder, you can always find all of his work at thevoicesf.org. Michael, let's talk again soon.
Yes, sir. Have a great weekend, Mo, Kim, Albert, and all the Remarkables. Happy to be here with you on a Friday, and check you next week.
There you go.